Welcome to What Juices You, where we explore what energizes leaders and how that energy fuels performance, connection, and growth. I'm Brady Wilson, and I'm from Juice Inc. And in each episode, I sit down with leaders and we talk about what fuels them, what sustains them, and the lessons they've learned. And today's guest has a lot of lessons that he can share with us that'll be really helpful, I believe. So today I'm excited to have John Kolm with me. John is an intelligence officer turned educator. He specializes in simulation-based training. He's a best-selling author. He's got a book called Crocodile Charlie and the Holy Grail that he co-authored. I literally could go on and on. This gentleman has been around the block. Welcome, John.
Well, Brady, thank you very much, and hello to everybody listening.
Yeah. So we're going to start with the question I've been asking people for 20 years. What juices you? And put a finer point on it, because as it relates to bringing simulation-based training to the world, that can be fraught sometimes because people's mindset around training, even though simulators have been around forever, it's still kind of come and deliver us some content or give us a motivational, inspiring speech, and that's going to do the trick. So you're approaching it a different way, and it really takes some energy and patience to bring that to the world. So what juices you when it comes to bringing simulation-based training to the world, Sean?
Human potential is what juices me, and that has always been the case. Making the most of the best of that. We are increasingly obsessed with technology today. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm quite highly technology trained myself. My wife is a technologist. AI is great. But human potential is going to always be the central thing. Or to quote Esther Dyson, when she was chair of ICANN, the Internet Committee for Assigned Names and Numbers, they're the people that give you your URL, joesgarage.com. That's what ICANN does. And Dyson is now a well-known philanthropist. She said the last bastion of innovation, the last thing that can't be copied, the only thing that's truly unique is the human being. And Beautiful. That's because if I envy you your technology, that's great, I can buy one too. I can copy it.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
But the human being is a little harder to copy. And so my background throughout my whole career, you could say industrial psychology, but I'd rather go with a more intelligence community, slightly more working class definition, and call it human factors.
Yes. From the intelligence community, I'm assuming that simulation-based training is massively important in that environment where we engage in an activity that nobody dies in, but we're upping our skill level and developing muscle. Is that where it started for you, John, or where did this passion for simulation-based training start?
That's exactly where it started, Brady. Back in the day in the intelligence community, we trained a lot of agents. I've trained a lot of agents. And the way they did that was they brought in working agents, of which I was one, and said, "Congratulations, now you're a trainer." Wow. The problem, it's a typical defense attitude of just drop you in it and see if you can swim, which is acceptable and standard. And I thought, all right, fine, but how do we do this? And the only thing we knew how to do really was just give them little copies of the reality we knew and get them to manage that. Now, that was spectacularly successful. But a lot of that, I think, was luck. We just did what we knew how to do. And it worked better than you would have ever imagined. So we used to train agents through simulation. We'd give them real things to do. The only way really to learn how to follow people is to follow people and make a complete fool of yourself and mess it up and get lost and just get better at it. And at the same time, I met up with a fellow named Peter Ring, who is my co-author on the book you mentioned, Crocodile Charlie and the Holy Grail. And Peter was an Air Force fighter pilot when we met.
Okay.
And we were just getting to the stage where we were both no longer operational. We were getting too senior to have any fun anymore. And so we thought, well, they'll probably be horrified, no sooner having promoted us, but toodaloo, we want more adventure than that. And so, of course, everyone I'm sure knows that simulation is used extensively for training pilots as well. So that was what Peter and I had in common, was just that notion of simulation. And is there a way to innovatively use that in the wider business world? And that was really our jumping off point.
Yes. Is simulation just the way we start? We're basically learning to crawl, learning to walk, learning to talk, etc. And it's there's some sort of controlled environment in which we explore and fall and explore. It feels to me like it's the human condition. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but is that the way you see it?
Yes, and all the evidence too, good, solid, not tree hugging, touchy feely stuff, but good, solid science suggests that human beings learn primarily by imitation. And
Right.
this is actually something that's being rediscovered now in some of the more demanding worlds of work. And here I'm particularly thinking of medicine, where we've done quite a lot of work with surgeons.
Mhm.
And the way that used to work was hit the books, get educated, learn the anatomy, pass the exam. The method now that's used for training surgeons is watch one, do one, teach one.
Okay.
They call it watch one, do one, teach one. And
Interesting.
even that now is being replaced by simulation using
Mhm.
mannequins.
I see.
Very expensive mannequins. They're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
They can die if you let them die. They have to be repaired. Apparently, it's expensive.
Yeah.
But we had the great good fortune to partner, and I want to stress our role in this was very minor. But we partnered with UCLA, with the School of
Mhm.
Medicine at the Brain Research Institute there,
Yeah.
to do some research using neurodynamic headsets measuring EEG to study the way in which Navy submarine command teams operated in moments of stress and peril. And these are the kinds of people that there's also the Jump Medical Simulation Center in Peoria, Illinois. Dr. John Vozenilek, some others are doing some amazing work with simulation in medicine. So if you ever should require an operation, chances are, if the surgeon works when he was under 40, they were trained using simulation.
Yeah. It feels to me like in the workplace, if we could have people mentored and coached in that watch one, do one, see one, and have somebody alongside of us when we do fail, and have failure not only acceptable but rewarded because it's so imperative to the learning process. What a difference that would make, as opposed to here's a bunch of information and muddle through it yourself without anybody alongside you. It's just, why is this so difficult for us to grasp, John, that what you're talking about?
Because we were all raised in a didactic model.
Yeah.
And that goes right back to the man himself, Didactylus, and he was an ancient Greek. So this has been going on for a while. Um,
Yeah.
but the classic symptom of it, and we've all seen this yay many thousand times, certainly. And I was trained by all those guys who served in Vietnam, was who trained my generation. So we were trained by tough old special forces soldiers who were they were not gentle with us, but they were very good trainers. But the classic symptom of that didactic model is when the instructor stands up and says, "All right, class, now we've got a lot to get through today," and everybody's heart sinks
Totally. Yeah.
because they're seeing this great volume of information being dropped on them from a height being imposed, and they just have to sit there
Oh
like
my
that.
God. Yeah.
And mammals are not designed to do that. Mammals are designed to go to sleep when they're warm and comfortable, not to pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're fighting basically every instinct in your body
Yeah.
and every single thing we know about learning. The didactic model has a point. I also at one point did a master's degree in pure maths, so I get it. I understand sitting in classrooms, hitting
Sure.
books, but it depends on what your goal is, Brady. If the goal is education, enlightenment, intellectual knowledge, that's great. I'm for it. It's not what I do.
Right.
Um, I, Psychology is not the study of inner life. It's often thought to be by people, but it's not. Psychology is not about trying to cyclically read what's going on in your innermost soul. Psychology is the study of behavior. It's the study of what people do and why they
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And that's what interests me. So, Team Results is a niche company. We only do one thing. We are in the behavior changing business. That's it. We use
Um,
simulation for that. If you want a deep understanding of neurodynamics, there are plenty of other companies around that can give you the PowerPoint slides and the books. But we're interested in behavioral change. That's what juices me.
I love that. Give us an example of perhaps a simulator that you use, what you've seen it do, the behaviors that you've seen it shift. Give us something that will make it concrete for our listeners to, because what I want at the end of this is people going, I want to get John Kolm. So, right? Tell us how this works.
And I would like to stress also, it's not just me. That we're a small business, but we're not a one-person business by any means. There are 14 of us. Every single person in Team Results is smarter than I am. So if you If you engage us, I promise I'm going to set the bottom standard for smart. Everyone else will be a bit smarter
That's
than that.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My favourite quote on this, Brady, is actually from Denzel Washington, who said, "If you do anything long enough, you'll get good at it." Now, he was talking about acting, but that's the basis of simulation as well. So, a
Hmm.
very good classic example. This is this has happened to us, 1,000 times. It's a very common one.
Yeah,
Uh, a client comes to us. They have 15 senior leaders. I'm making this up, but it's very close to the truth.
yeah,
They say, our leadership team is terrific. They're wonderful. We love them, but they cannot get things done on time to save themselves,
yeah.
not to save their souls. And when they're late, they don't really worry about it too much. Oh, well, we're late. We'll be on time next time. And the only one who's really crying is the CEO. And that's because he just lost two contracts because they weren't on time.
Exactly.
So you can yell at them, you can lecture them, you can make them watch the 5-step surefire never fail how to be on time program
Right.
with 12,000 PowerPoints as they slowly die, um, or you can get them to practice the behaviours of being on time and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. Human learning doesn't change at all as we age. We learn advanced executive skills the same way we learn to ride a bike.
Yeah.
You get on, you fall off. You can't really learn it from PowerPoints. So what we would do, as distinct from, say, let's give them 1,000 PowerPoints, let's give them the lecture, perhaps a very authoritative lecture, but still a lecture. Let's do the training course. We would say, give them to us for 2.5 days. We will give them a very exciting project to manage that is custom designed, and they will practice being on time. We'll start easy, get difficult, and end up really difficult.
Yeah.
And by the time they're finished, they will have that behavior down of how you get things on time, what you do if you're running behind. Do you feel that you have the authority and status to stand up in the group and say, hey, guys, check your watches. We're running
Right.
late.
Right.
Do you feel that you can do that? How do you do that without getting people offside? And 101 other skills that they'll just rehearse and practice and practice. It doesn't matter, of course, if they get it wrong on a simulation. That's the whole point. We'd far rather they do that than get it wrong at work. So,
You're saying it'll shift skills, and I agree with you completely, John. But
yeah.
you might be selling yourself short, because what I hear in this is, for me to put my hand up, I have to challenge my identity as well. Am I a person who is likable and easy to get along with? Because now I'm pushing back and I'm challenging the system. So it's identity, it's mindsets, it's beliefs, it's the way we it's our valence as well, how we show up, and the emotional charge that we bring. So yes, skills, I get it 100%. And that's probably what people see. But then there's this iceberg underneath there that I think you're impacting as well in those 2.5 days. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say personal epiphanies is not the primary goal because that's a very personal thing. That's a decision we make for ourselves as individuals.
Yeah.
But certainly, I would put it very simply as far as the individual benefits go. I think it's a good program if every single person in that group
Yeah.
has found something they can truly admire in every other single person. They do not have to agree. They don't have to like each other. It's disagreement doesn't mean bad teamwork. Far from it.
Right. Yeah.
If they argue and fight and disagree and don't see it the same way, that's perfectly okay. The only thing that's deadly is the cessation of communication. Von Clausewitz said the cessation of communications is the prelude to war. And the antidote for that is that each individual finds something to truly admire. Like David's attitude, his typical IT department attitude towards sales drives me mad, and I'd like to strangle him, but I really love his dedication and I really admire his technical skill.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things are what holds a team together. So if as individuals we can do that, then we feel a bit more comfortable about putting our hand up and saying, hey, guys, do you realize we're running late? And there's less concern then about how I might come across as though I'm putting myself forward, trying to be noticed by the instructor, being that guy,
Yeah.
being obnoxious. Hopefully, people will understand if my intentions are a little bit more creative than that if they admire me. So, if we design the simulation properly and
Yeah.
if we run it properly, then that should happen naturally.
Hmm. The word admire is so refreshing. And I just want to be very authentic with you and say that I haven't heard it used in that manner, and it is. So I just feel like it's so helpful and so refreshing. It speaks to something, John, that we're thinking about moral elevation, and so you'd know about this, but somebody who has, had a relative killed by a shooting, and in the courtroom steps up and with incredible courage actually forgives the perpetrator. And people look at that and they see moral elevation and they go, I don't know if I could, but it seems like Roger Bannister just ran the 4 minute mile, and now a whole bunch of us are going to be able to as well. Maybe I could forgive as well because I have witnessed. I admire that. I admire. Is what you're talking about in terms of admiration hooked to this concept of moral elevation?
Yes, to a great degree, yes, and it's also very hooked to the notion of taking responsibility, which is something I think is a bit misunderstood in the workplace.
Okay.
I can't speak for, well, actually, I can speak for people who've lost their lives in service, but I'd rather not,
I bet.
because that's very far from most people's experience.
Sure.
But certainly, let's talk about bad things happening.
Yeah.
Only the best leaders will stand up and take responsibility for something really bad happening, particularly if there's no conceivable way that they could be the cause of the really bad thing happening. For example, the next chairperson of Boeing, following on from a long list of misdeeds. Is it their fault? No, they weren't even working for Boeing. They stand up and take responsibility, though, if they're good leaders. Why? Is it to do with moral elevation? Is it to do with being a better person than you or I? Maybe. But there is a much more practical reason, which is if I don't take responsibility for something, then I've placed that outside my control.
Right.
The car crashed, nothing I could do about it. Wasn't my fault, was the other driver. Nothing I could do. Okay. But if I don't take responsibility for something, it means it can happen again. And I don't want to be in another car crash.
Exactly.
So maybe I'll take responsibility for the car crash, even if I was T-boned by a drunk driver. It's not about accepting blame. That's totally different. This is about taking control. So one of the things that people might do if they mess something up really badly on the program, and maybe it's not their fault, maybe something broke, maybe it rained and something got wet and slippery and didn't work the way it should. Who knows? Because they do spend a bit of time outdoors with us. But taking responsibility is often the first step toward taking power.
Hmm. Hmm. One of the things that we wrestle with is leaders who become over responsible and trigger in other people under responsibility. So that responsibility virus, I'm not hearing you say that at all. I'm hearing you say that there is an appropriate stepping up when bad things happen.
Yep.
That doesn't, it's not saviorism. It's not assuming that again, it's not saying culpability even, but it is shouldering that which I can shoulder in a very tough situation. So can you just help us kind of tease that out a little bit, not going into over responsibility, but stepping up even when others would say, you don't have to take responsibility for that.
Right. It comes back to a simple question to me and to the words of somebody I admired very much, Colin Powell. I had the great good fortune of meeting him a couple of times. He was
Mm.
the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, for those who
Yeah.
don't remember, and
Yeah.
then he was Secretary of State. Uh, and the question to which Powell addressed himself was, how do you lead people? And you probably don't do it with long words, complicated intellectual concepts, or PowerPoint slides,
Right.
even though you yourself might be quite highly trained. And Powell, of course, was very highly trained. But he used to say strategies don't matter much. Policies don't really get you anywhere. What's always most important is the people involved. That was something he used to say all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, how do you lead people? I have a story to tell you if you want to hear it, which is a true story and one of my favorites.
I love it.
I'll kick off with that if I may. Is that okay, Brady?
Absolutely.
Lighten things up a little. We were running a complicated team program for a large military academy. The driver for that, incidentally, is that these days, when you joined the military in the old days, it was because your father was in, or your brother was in, or your sister
Okay.
was in.
Yep.
Nowadays, 80% of people who go to officer training have no military tradition at all in their family.
Wow. Okay.
So where do they get their ideas from? Answer: the movies, television, not necessarily the best place. So
Totally.
socializing them to values-based leadership, which used to not be necessary, is now very necessary. And that's what
Mhm.
we were doing. That was the job we were doing for this academy. So it's late at night. We've got 350 military cadets, and they're all at campsites. Normally, you would not be at a campsite with us. You'd be in a very comfortable hotel room with great food. But these people are military cadets. They better get used to it.
Yeah.
So there are 13 campsites. I'm walking along a track in the darkness, totally unseen, carrying a milk crate full of equipment, getting something set up. And in the distance, through that still night, very clearly, I can hear a young cadet being counseled on his skills by his divisional officer. And the divisional officer is the paterfamilias. They're usually a captain, someone like that, right?
Yeah.
The captain's obviously giving this young guy some feedback he doesn't want to hear. I didn't hear that. What I heard coming through the still night was a high piping voice from this cadet that said, "But sir, I am a leader. It's just that nobody wants to follow me." I came very close to dropping the milk crate, which would have been
It's beautiful.
that is an absolutely true story.
So
Um,
beautiful.
the only reason that if I do anything well, and that's arguable, the only reason would be that I have been very well taught and very well trained, and I'm just trying to give it back a little. And what they used to teach us was that we lead above all else by attitude and example,
Hmm.
not by words, but by attitude and example. People look at what you do far more than they do at what you say. So this whole business of taking responsibility, communicating effectively, not blaming people when things go wrong, which is an easy trap to fall into, sticking to
Yeah.
time, whatever it is they're working on a simulation, is all about leadership by attitude and example. And that doesn't mean there's one leader, it means leadership of each other.
Right. Yeah. When you are designing your simulator, I am assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
Sure.
I'm hearing it's probably very bespoke to the
Yes.
leadership team that you're working with.
Yes.
I imagine you have certain components and certain things and parts of the simulator that you would perhaps go to 8 times out of 10, but always there's going to be something very bespoke. Could you talk to us a little bit about how it is that you design these things and what they might even look like? What are they
Sure.
trying to do when they're getting a simulator around delivering on time?
A lot of what we do is all patent protected, incidentally. We have a very big, complicated patent that protects the whole thing.
I bet.
But a lot of the ideas come from the training and the background that we have, and it's a peaceful application of once warlike skills, combined with a lot of things that we've learned from working with large corporates like Toyota, Pfizer, IBM, Hitachi, Polo Ralph Lauren. The list goes on. People shouldn't think, by the way, that if you did want to work with us, you have to be a big company. You do not. We have hundreds of companies that are tiny, some
Hmm.
that are 5 people.
Yep.
It's just that big names are easy to recognize.
Sure.
But the, the methods we use special effects. We have all the proper licenses for that and all the right training for that kind of thing. So we use a lot of Hollywood special effects to make it real, to raise the jeopardy and make the simulation a little bit. The biggest problem with simulation is suspension of disbelief.
Yes.
And you know that, Brady.
Yep.
Who cares? It's only a flight simulator. What the hell? If it crashes, it crashes. I'm going to tell jokes and have a cup of coffee,
Right.
which you would, of course, never do in a real plane. So getting rid of that or addressing that tendency to be dismissive, that tendency to think it's all not real, is something that we're very big on. And so
Yes.
we make that the jeopardy's artificial, of course, but we're pretty good at making it feel real
I bet.
through the use of special effects and proprietary techniques. It
Yeah.
is like the short answer to your question is it's like a great big erector set.
Okay.
We have, I think, about 9,000 props. That's if you count everything, but it's about 9,000 if you do.
That is a massive commitment to the suspension of disbelief right there.
That's literally counting everything, though.
Yeah.
That's if you have 10 wooden pegs, that's counting them as 10. If you lump it together, maybe about 600 total categories of props.
Okay.
Somewhat less when we travel. It gets down to a typical 2.5 day program. If we're traveling and not taking a trailer full of equipment, it might be 1,000 props. But you'd be amazed what you can fit into 2 suitcases if they're built to purpose.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So using those components, You design a simulation that emphasizes, repeats, and rehearses the behaviors they tell you they want.
Yes.
So it's really as simple as that. On time is an easy one to explain. So we'll start with that. Maybe you start with you start them on a project. You give them one. We give them a single project, not team building games. We don't do team building games.
Right.
But I'll tell you why in a minute if you're curious. But
Yeah, I
we give
am.
them. We start by giving them an early phase of a project where they can be a bit late. The coordination's not all that too terribly difficult, and
Mhm.
then the middle is the middle, and by the end we can get, if necessary, we'll give them a job to do that has to be coordinated to across a whole team to a tolerance of 1/1000th of a second.
Wow.
And I've
Okay.
seen a team of 350 people do that.
Wow.
Now, that's not easy, but of course, they end up greatly admiring themselves, proving they have the ability to do it, and giving their designated leaders at least an excuse to say, well, don't tell me you can't do this because you did it during a simulation. Now, it was only a simulation, we get it, but I've seen you do this. I've seen you get things done on time.
Yes.
So why can't you get this project done on time?
Yeah. Yeah. And you must be creating a massive imprint on the culture, in just in terms of belief and in terms of possibility and in terms of agency. It's just got to be a beautiful uh, body imprint, almost a somatic imprint on everybody that's just, yes, we can actually do this.
Some things are harder than others. I mean, if being on time is a simple example, if you want a complicated one, how about handling chaos?
Yeah.
This is something that's impacted the federal public servants like a freight train,
Oh
because
my goodness.
people who like chaos don't go into government. People go into government that like order, control,
Yep.
organisation, discipline, doing the right things the right way.
Yep.
And suddenly, what seems to be, if not permanent, certainly a mid to long term state of chaos has been imposed on them. They hate it. They're no good at it.
Yep.
They don't want to be good at it. They don't think they should have to be good at it.
Yep.
They're not psychologically suited to it. So, a lot of what we're doing right now is helping some of these people deal with imposed chaos and still manage to operate.
Oh yeah.
That's a little harder.
Oh, for sure. And are there times then when you have to dip into, okay, emotional intelligence and being able to kind of keep your marbles in the midst of everything inside of you wants to go binary, either or, and in chaos, you've got to somehow hold that tension. I would imagine there are times when you're giving people certain either awarenesses or skills to be able to even engage in the simulator. Is that true?
Indeed, the British poet Rudyard Kipling said, if you can keep your head when all about are losing theirs. So this is something that people do get a chance to do on the simulation. But I
Mhm.
do want to stress, at least the way we run simulations, if they're going to go wrong, we don't resist it. We let them go wrong,
Mhm.
because in the real world you can't do that. If you are, let's say, the head surgeon at the hospital and you're training a young surgeon, you can't let the patient die
Right.
and then turn to the young surgeon and go, so what have we learned? You know,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
going to end very badly. And elsewhere in industry too, you generally, if you're a leader, you can't let things go wrong beyond a certain point,
Mhm.
because again, I'm quoting here Ken Asano, who taught me a great deal, one of our first CEO clients. He was the CEO of Toyota.
Okay.
So we started big, and Ken had this rule where you had to go and see him if you were going to train his people. It was like seeing the Pope. You had
I
to
bet.
you had to go see Asano before he would let you anywhere near his staff. And
Yeah.
I greatly admire that.
Yeah.
And Ken gave me some advice, which I'm going to share with you and your listeners, freely admitting and answering your question that I didn't understand it at all at the time. I do now. And he was a short man, but he had a very piercing gaze. You know, he owned the room. And he fixed me with a piercing gaze and said, just remember, John, if you're going to work with us, Toyota is a business, not a school.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I know exactly what he meant now, but
Yeah.
it took a couple of years.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that is my answer to your question. We're getting the practice behaviors rather than didactically learn stuff. Does that address the question, though?
It does. It does.
Good.
You were also talking about you're not doing like team building and
Right.
games and that kind of stuff. And I think I understand, but perhaps for our listener, just parse that out a little bit.
Certainly. May I throw in a little bit of historical
Yeah,
context?
please do.
Okay, so just really quickly, and I promise listeners that I'm going somewhere with this.
I bet you are.
World War II ends. It's the biggest demobilization in the history of anything. Everybody wants to get out. The war's over. They want to get back to their lives. They want to be postmen and dentists and English teachers and whatever they were before the war started. So there is now a massive de-skilling in the military. All that leadership expertise is going straight out the door, and yet the military knows they must continue. And young people are still trying to join the military, and they have to be trained. So what the hell do you do?
Right.
So what they came up with was a notion of, all right, but before you go, can you please come up with a way to intensively train people in leadership very fast?
Wow.
And that's where that whole notion of get the raft across the river on 4 44-gallon drums, one of which has had 2 bullet holes deliberately shot into it with only 4 pieces of rope in 25 minutes. That's where that whole world of team building games began.
Okay.
It began as a fast way to cope with a massive skill deficit. And for the military, it was a perfectly good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the modern era then came along.
Right.
And a lot of these ideas now are really showing their age. And that doesn't mean that they're all bad by any means.
Mm-hmm.
It's still being done. I know there are organizations out there that are still doing that. But what really turned me around, and this is a longer story which people can hear later if they want, was about the very first program we ran. And we didn't know we were running a program. Peter Ring and I got dragged in backwards. But it was for Special Forces soldiers.
Yeah.
And some others. But I just couldn't see taking Special Forces soldiers into the car park and asking them to juggle bean bags and then sitting them down in a classroom and saying, okay, what have we learned? Because they'll laugh at you. They'll go home. They'll muster out. They won't tolerate it. So the question became, what else? And so we realized that whole world of trust falls, spider webs, carrying each other on piggyback, for goodness sake, don't do that. It's terribly dangerous. So are trust falls. That whole world was not going to work for our community, for what we needed. Plus, also, there were 1,000 people already doing it, so it was no fun.
Totally.
And one of the team results' primary goals is have fun. So that was it's have fun, do some good, and be a viable business are our 3 goals.
I see. Yeah.
The third one's there because if you're not viable, you won't have any fun and you can't do any good.
Yep. Yep.
That's why there's a business one there.
Sure.
So we knew we had to come up with something else, and luckily we had this whole world of stuff, ideas that we could steal and run away with from training pilots and training intelligence officers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, John, you're of an age, I don't know how old you are, you don't have to disclose that, but you're of an age where I still feel that there's a ton of passion inside of you, yet there are, I'll bet you, a lot of listeners your age who either have said, I'm very close to retirement, or I've already retired. I don't get that sense from you, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're just like, Brady, I'm sayonara for like 1 year from now. But there is some energy and some passion in you to keep doing this thing. And so I'm assuming that's the do some good thing in the world part. But tell me a little bit about your journey and why it is that you're still doing this now.
Certainly. I'll give you a short answer and a medium length answer, if I may. The short answer is by background, most of us in team results are performers. We're about half performers and about half technicians.
Okay.
So half of us are the guy on the stage, and the other half are the guy behind the guy on the stage that's setting off the pyrotechnics in the right way at the right time without hurting anyone.
Right.
Which is quite a skill.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, we all have good technical training as well. I have a degree in mathematics. I have a degree in psychology. Our operations manager has a degree in psychology and is also well qualified in physics. And the list goes on. Mm-hmm. But all of us have that performance gene or background to some degree. So the question is, when does a performer retire? When does an artist retire? It's not really a line of work where retirement is an option in the way that it is in a standard job where at you're 65, it's time to go, you get a gold watch.
Yeah.
When do you do that if you're an artist or a performer?
Yeah.
Most of us keep going till we drop dead.
Yeah.
So my staff have strong instructions that I have every intention. I probably will drop dead during a team program. And their instructions are drag the body to one side, throw a tarp over it, and finish the program because the client's entitled.
I love that. And there are
Um,
13 other people who can step right into your shoes.
without the slightest effort and be better at it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I never wanted to run a personality cult ever. I
No.
wanted to run a business, and there's a very big difference.
Yeah.
How did I come to it personally? Well, initially I trained as a mathematician and was sent to some very good schools. I was very lucky to be sent there. I could never have afforded it. I was a working class kid, but luckily never had to pay a penny for any of it. So thank you, Australian government. Thank you, Defence Department.
Yeah.
End up working in the National Security Agency as a code broker.
Interesting. Yeah.
Where I met a beautiful federal agent, American federal agent, and got on rather well with her. And we've now been, yesterday was our 22nd anniversary.
Oh, my goodness. Congratulations. Yeah.
So we met, how nerdy can you get? We met in the government code broking school at the National Security Agency.
Yeah.
How bizarre is that?
Yeah.
Ended up running missions in the field, Brady, and very quickly made two discoveries. The first, that I was nowhere near the brightest person out there. I mean, nowhere close. We had some true geniuses there, people who were scarcely human, and I knew I was nowhere near them.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I could wear a suit and not look as if I'd slept in it.
Yeah.
So very quickly got pushed into the field, started doing field operations, turned out to enjoy it and to be good at it. And at some point along the line, decided that most project failures were caused by failures of team dynamics rather than failures of technology.
Hmm.
And at that point, through sheer necessity and the need to not take what we used to call the early retirement plan, I had to get more interested in people.
Yeah.
And I did actually have a psychology degree, but it was time to pull it out and
Yeah.
dust it off.
I bet. Yeah.
Actually reread some of those books and actually use it. And ended up very quickly becoming much more interested in people and therefore becoming humans factors specialist.
Mhm.
So it was entirely through the force of circumstance and self-preservation.
Oh, my goodness. What a great journey. Is your wife involved in the business, if that's not too private a question?
She's a little involved. My wife's name is Leslie. Her PhD in math is from Northwestern.
Okay.
And she was also a code broker at the National Security Agency for years.
Yeah.
She served there longer than I did, retired, and became an author.
Okay.
So she's now working on her third book. The first two have been published. They're both bestsellers, so she's
Oh,
pretty
my
happy.
God. You've both got bestsellers. That's amazing. And what's the genre?
Privacy.
Okay.
She got interested in the right Americans have to privacy while working at the National Security Agency, because on the one hand, you can't invade the privacy of American citizens.
Yeah.
On the other hand, no one wants you to sit there while 9/11 happens all over again. So there's a middle way that's actually easy to pontificate about, but quite hard to navigate.
I bet.
Between citizens' rights and a national defense,
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
And she got interested in, why do we think we have a right to privacy? Because it's not in the Constitution. It is not in the Bill of Rights.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought that.
I wouldn't have thought that either. I had assumed it was in the Bill of Rights, but no.
Wow.
And so my wife began to investigate that, write books about that. And she's working on another one now that I've been sworn to secrecy about. All I'm allowed to tell you is it's related to AI.
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
So she's far brighter than me. I'm just a working industrial psychologist.
Yeah. I'm so hopeful that smart people like her are going to teach us how to put some helpful guardrails around that one.
I hope so. She worked with us a little bit doing some of the mathematical analysis for the work that we did with UCLA with the electroencephalograms, the devices that connect an electrical signal from the brain by measuring tiny voltage changes on the scalp, is what EEG is.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of data from Navy teams. We designed scenarios for them, which of course is what we do. We had an easy one, we had an in-between one, we had a hard one. We wanted to see if there's any difference in the way, not the individual brains worked, but the way the team brain worked, the way the Stolt brain worked.
Yes.
All six people at the same time, considered as a unit, as a team. What are their brains doing? That's what we're looking at. That takes a fair bit of mathematical analysis. So luckily, we had a team mathematician who helped us with that. So yes, my wife has been a huge help.
What was the upshot of that particular piece of research?
Two big discoveries that
Yeah,
I and Professor Ron Stevens, who was the head of the program, and I, he had one that he thought was super cool, and I had one that I thought was super cool.
yeah, yeah.
The one that he thought was super cool was the measurement of neurodynamic workload and engagement, and how that completely evaporates once you put people in a classroom.
Okay.
And that happened by accident. We mistakenly left the EEG headsets switched on
I love this.
after after a simulation. We were doing all our measurements, and we designed the simulation. We kind of knew what we were doing. And then there was the compulsory debrief afterward that the Navy insisted on.
Everything
And
shuts down.
yeah, but we forgot to turn off the
Totally,
devices.
totally.
And it wouldn't surprise you perhaps that workload is how hard you're working, engagement is how hard you're concentrating.
Okay.
It wouldn't surprise us much, I don't think, you or I, with our experience, to think that neurodynamic workload and engagement might go down a little bit while they're all sitting and talking. What nobody was ready for is it didn't go down a little bit, it cratered. It went boom like
Amazing.
that.
Amazing.
And these are very, very highly trained, very, very highly disciplined people.
Yes.
At least you'd hope so, because they're out there in submarines with nuclear weapons. So I'd
Right.
like to think they're highly trained.
Yeah.
That was a real shock, is just how quickly you lose them when you sit them down in a classroom environment. It took a few seconds. So that was Professor Stevens' favourite result. Mine was the marker for anticipation, which is a new idea that we came up with doing this research, which has been published. Springer Verlag, if anyone wants to know, is
Okay.
where it was published. So what we were observing was we're observing their neurodynamic entropy. In other words, the amount of neurodynamic energy that's being applied to the task at hand in a
Yes.
measurable way from EEG. And we're watching the entropy go up and down. Now, if they're doing a project where they have a success, let's suppose we design the project and the goal is to set something off.
Sure.
So it's very difficult to do that. And finally, poof, they set it off and everybody goes, yes! It wouldn't surprise you to see that there's a sudden drop in neurodynamic entropy as they have a sudden moment of unity and celebration.
Yes.
That wouldn't surprise anyone, I wouldn't think.
Right.
However, what we noticed was when they got to a point where they were sure they were going to succeed, the drop in entropy happened in advance.
Okay. An anticipatory.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So what we learned from that is that when teams think they're about to succeed, they'll often behave as though they already have. And when they think they're about to fail, they'll often behave as though they already have.
So it's belief that you're actually able to measure in that regard.
We had to call it something, because we had to write a paper. So we called it the marker for anticipation.
Right.
And that's what it's become now in the literature. So now when we run team simulations, I've learned to look for that. And so if they're heading nowhere fast, they had a plan, it all fell apart, they're over time, they're using an approach that deep down is probably not going to work, and they've only got 7 minutes left. I've now learned to look for that kind of in the team beforehand and try to help them catch it before it becomes problematic.
Right.
So that was my favorite outcome.
So Stephen's favorite outcome would be interesting to anybody who's sitting in front of a classroom of people, any trainer or facilitation expert in the world. It's like, oh, how do we acknowledge and understand that? And then what do we do with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, indeed. It was just, obviously, don't get me wrong, you certainly have to talk about stuff. And on our simulations, you can't just do simulation the whole time because there has to be reflection.
Yep.
And reflection requires sitting down and chatting about it. Now, if you can sit them down outside and nobody's allergic, and it's a nice day and no one has a bee sting allergy, maybe you can do it outside. Yep. But most often you do have to sit them inside. But my argument to that for my colleagues who have raised that very question, like, why do you sit them down when you know what's going to happen? And I say, well, number one, you still have to some of the time, but at least know what you're letting yourself in for. At least know what you're causing.
Yes.
And be ready for that, and just accept that that's going to be the way it is. And you can design the program then so that the impact of that is not fatal. And we have very strict standards for how long we're going to be sitting down inside talking, and it's not long.
Yeah, and I bet you there's a cadence and a dynamism to this, that going into the self-reflection and that introspective space is actually, it can be energizing in a different way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, it can. As long
yeah,
as it doesn't drag on, as long as you
yeah,
have full participation, full engagement, and there are ways to do that. And one of the things we actually help people with if they need help, it's something that I'll freely admit the Special Forces taught me this. The programs are not military at all; they're completely civilian. But a couple of the ideas, we can't help being who we are.
sure.
Pete has a couple of ideas that he uses from being a fighter pilot. I have a couple I use from the old days, and one of them is auditing a group. Have you ever met anybody who was in a some kind of special operations unit? Have you? I'm sure
I've
you have,
not.
Brady.
Well, I've done some training at the FBI, but
Well, you would have. Some of the agents, have you noticed that they stare at you in a way that's a bit disconcerting,
yes, yes,
like that,
yeah,
like this? Okay, that's because we get trained to do it,
okay,
and it's
yeah,
it's not because anyone's trying to creep anybody else out. It's because they train you to audit a group before you go in and do something important.
okay,
Who's paying attention? Who's not? Who's angry? Who isn't? Who's bored? Who isn't? Who thinks it's all BS?
hmm,
Who doesn't? Knowing that kind of thing before you go in can, in some circumstances, be I don't want to get into it, but the stakes can be very high.
right,
In the business world, somewhat less high, but still high. So
sure,
that habit of auditing the group is something that you learn, and we teach them that on our programs a little bit.
hmm,
And that also helps with the marker for anticipation,
yeah,
and it also helps with the diminution of attention that happens when you sit people down.
right, right. You're almost shifting people's intention,
Yeah,
uh, uh, and there's something almost restorative and so focused attention, noticing, paying
my,
attention to things. It has a real impact on our energy.
my word. I've done a lot of climbing too. And we don't do anything like that on our programs. I don't think, jumping off a cliff and being scared out of your wits is going to help you be a better finance manager. I don't see the connection. I never have. I just do
Yeah,
climbing for fun.
yeah,
But certainly training people, I've put many people over a cliff on a rope who were shaking with fear from head to foot. And that's okay. What's not okay is when they're checked out.
right.
So that's another place you learn that ability. And if they're scared to death, no worries. Go repel your heart out, have a good time. But if they're actually checked out, that's when you say, I tell you what, why don't you just come back up here, take a few steps, sit down,
Yeah,
and we'll get to it in half an hour. So that's a skill that I'd recommend anybody learn. That skill of seeing if a person is checked in or not is
yeah,
very useful at work. We all know it as kids, but we lose it as we get older because it gets overlaid by sophistication.
true. Hey, Crocodile Charlie,
Yeah,
tell us about your book a little bit. I mean, the segue is your wife's an author,
yeah,
you're a best-selling author, and I bet you there's
just luck.
some viewers, some listeners who are going to be interested in getting a hold of that book. So tell us a little bit about Crocodile Charlie.
Surely, for anyone who does want to get hold of it, it's very easy. It's called Crocodile Charlie and the Holy Grail,
Yeah.
and it's available on Amazon. And there are two different publishers. You'll get different editions, but it doesn't matter much. The first publisher was Penguin, and they brought it out on, I think, 14 different countries and 7 different languages.
Wow.
Then the Apple Music picked it up and signed us to do a recorded book version
Yeah.
of it.
Your voice?
Yes, I would rather have not. They wanted to. They had a. Do you want to hear an anecdote about this?
Yeah, I do.
All
Yeah.
right. They had. This is a company called Belinda Books,
Okay.
and they have the deal with Apple Music and are one of the world's, I think, probably the world's biggest book publisher. So they were going to record this book because now we have the contract, and they hired a guy named Stig Weems, whom you've heard 100 times. You just don't know you have.
Okay.
He's one of Hollywood's best voice actors.
Oh,
So if in post production they change something, they need Dustin Hoffman to say, "Come into the room and sit down," and he never said it.
right.
They don't go back to Hoffman's agent and rehire him. They
No.
license his voice. And Stig Weems says, "Come into the room and sit down," and you'd never know the difference.
Wow. Yeah.
Stig is an amazing guy. Bryce Courtney is one of the best authors Australia ever produced. He wrote a wonderful book called The Potato Factory, and Bryce and I have the same agent, the same literary agent. So apparently, Stig was recording one of his books that was set in South Africa. And Bryce said, I need you to do this in a South African accent. And Stig turned around and said, oh, really? Which region?
Oh my goodness. Amazing. Yeah.
So I would have far rather Stig, but there was a trend at the time for authors to record their own books, and
Yeah.
that got it. The publicity people won the day. So I'm afraid I apologise to millions of people, but it is my voice. And then also it was brought out by another company called Possibilities Publishing.
Yeah.
So either one of those, Crocodile Charlie and the Holy Grail.
It's great.
How it started? Well,
Yeah.
it was like this. We used to have a big property in New South Wales in Australia. Think Virginia, if you're from the United States.
Yeah.
Long, low, rolling hills, horse country.
Right.
Think, around BC or somewhere in the interior from Canada's low rolling hills and lots of horses. So we had just finished a program there, and a bus had just disappeared down a dirt road into the distance in a plume of smoke, a plume of dust with 30 people on it from a client. And it gets very, very quiet at the end of our team programs. You get very pensive because the quietude, it's a difficult thing to describe, but the quietude just comes in on you like a blanket the moment the clients leave. And it's an interesting moment.
I understand, because you got a whole bunch of performers who have been putting out and super connected and engaged, and it's like all of a sudden it's like
it's more their energy that we miss.
Okay, yeah.
Their energy is gone, and all we can hear is birds. So neither of us is good for much for about half an hour after I leave. So both of us, Peter Ring and I, were sitting on the porch sipping cups of tea that some thoughtful person had brought us.
Yeah.
As they drove off, and I won't try to imitate Pete's very broad Australian accent. I had to be a diplomat and learn to speak coherently, but Pete was a farmer. So Pete said, they come up with a lot of stuff on these programs that I don't see anywhere in any of the books anywhere. And I've had all that elite training, leaders of the future, and all the rest of it with the Air Force. They sent me to Harvard, did all that stuff. I still haven't seen any of that stuff anywhere that they come up with on our programs. And I said, yeah, I think you're right. Pete said, somebody should write that down. I said, yeah, I think you're right. And Pete,
not me, but you. Yeah.
And Pete said, yeah, somebody should. I said, yeah, somebody should. And we finally realized there were just two of us on the veranda. Right. So we agreed that we would write not a book, but a set of notes.
Oh.
And that we would print these notes and hand them out as a takeaway to people. Staple in the top left-hand corner, the usual thing.
Yeah.
So we did that. And just on a whim, I sent them in to Australia's leading literary agent, which is an unbelievably cheeky thing to do. I didn't know anybody. It's like showing up at Hollywood and saying, can I be in a movie? It's that level of naive. And she was pretty angry when I called her the first time. How did you get this number? But 24 hours after getting the manuscript, she called back and said, I think you've got something here.
Really?
Yes. And 10 days later, we had a contract with Penguin.
Goodness.
Unheard of. Just
yeah.
Any writers out there, don't do this.
No.
This breaks every how to get published rule there's ever been. Read the Writer's Digest book, read the Query Clinic. That's how you're supposed to do it. But yes, 10 days later, we had a contract, and Penguin said, fine, you've got 4 weeks to write the book.
Oh, my goodness.
So 4 foodless, sleepless weeks later, a manuscript was delivered. And that was the first edition of Crocodile Charlie and the Holy Grail. It became a bestseller almost immediately. Why, I couldn't tell you, possibly just luck. And I think we're now in the 13th edition.
That is amazing. So how did you and Peter do that? If you want to just get into that for a second, were you like holed up in some cottage somewhere, or was it back and forth and back and forth? How did you do that? Or you write this, I'll write this?
It was back and forth and back and forth.
Okay.
I would write something, I'd send it to Ringo, he'd come back and with comments. I'd send it to my wife because we knew that it was going to be published internationally.
Yeah.
And I'd say, could you please remove all the vernacular from this stuff that people who aren't Australian will not understand?
Sure.
And so she crossed out singlet and wrote T-shirt, and she crossed out bar heater and wrote radiator, and, all the things that would not make it translate. So I had Pete and my wife, and meanwhile I'm back in my little study just because I've been writing professionally since I was 14 years old. So I'm in my little study going tappity, tappity, tappity. And we knew that we had to tell a story, otherwise it would be dry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I had this very vivid image. I can't really tell you where it comes from. Stephen King says the same thing. He says he doesn't really know where inspiration comes from. I'm with him.
Mhm.
I also don't know.
Yeah.
But I had this vision of a guy named Charlie who runs a successful, and this doesn't give the book away at all. I promise you, you'll still enjoy
Okay.
the book.
Yeah.
Who runs a successful business, but he hits the wall,
Yeah.
and he realizes there's a level he'll never go past. And a client in whom he has great faith for big business says, "I will never give you big business, and this is why."
Okay.
So Charlie, of course, goes back very dejected. And the
Hmm.
rest of the book is the story. He decides he's going to just take a time out, spend 6 months traveling. And this is the story of his travels and his experiences as he works with some pretty amazing people, most of whom are based on real people,
Wow.
moving around locations that I happen to know that are exotic and exciting just to keep the action moving, you
Sure.
know. So it's what used to be called an anabasis, which means a long random trek during which you learn something.
Huh.
And Charlie goes on this quest for 6 months and then comes back to the business. So it's the story of, and everybody calls him Crocodile Charlie because they think he's insincere,
Oh,
and
really?
and that deeply hurts his feelings because he doesn't feel insincere. So he starts asking, well, why? And what am I doing wrong? And what might others know that I don't know yet? And that's how we get a book.
I can't. I I know that the one that you sent me got hung up in at
It did.
customs, and I cannot wait to
Sorry.
read Crocodile Charlie. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I hope people get a hold of that.
Hopefully enjoy it. It's meant to be a 5 hour read, like all Penguin books, so it shouldn't be a great commitment. You know, it's a train journey or a plane trip.
Yeah, yeah. John, we have some thorny issues in our world right now, and I can picture you being helpful in the midst of them. But we're divided along the lines of politics and gender and age and religion and race, and it just goes on and on and on. Do you find yourself being drawn into those situations where you're actually designing a simulator to help people be able to turn toward each other in some sort of productive way rather than turning away from each other and othering the other person? Are you in the middle of those kinds of situations?
Sometimes, yes, you do work with organisations that are fragmented. They're
Hmm.
more often fragmented along local tactical lines than they are
Right.
along the big political issues of the day.
Got it.
Some organisations, you know, it might be people who like one party not wanting to work with people who like another, but that's highly unusual. It's mostly IT can't stand finance and finance can't stand IT
Yep. Exactly.
because IT thinks finance is arrogant and finance thinks IT all have square heads.
Right.
And yet, if they don't work together, you know, they're not going to be able to succeed as a company. And too often, the only person who sees that clearly is the CEO. But of course, you need a lot more than just the CEO to be able to validate that. The goal is based on a premise. And the premise is that human beings have more in common. They have more that joins them than they do that separates them.
Believe that.
Now, if we're wrong about that, then we're sunk.
Yes.
But that's
Exactly.
the assumption that I've always made in T results.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the conclusion that follows from that for any program we might run is again that what if that's true, then what it means is there's always something you can admire in the other person,
Yeah.
right? I don't admire Karl Marx. The man was a communist. I was deeply, viscerally opposed to everything he ever believed in, helped to fight the Cold War, and did my very best to defeat communism, and was very pleased when the Soviet Union fell and the wall fell.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean Marx was an idiot. And when he said, for example, before we can change, we must ruthlessly and unsentimentally examine ourselves and everything we're doing, yeah, he was right. So I can find something to admire in Marx, even though I don't agree with his philosophy. And hopefully we can make those same discoveries all around the place as people and find something that unifies us. And it might be something unexpected. And if you like, I don't know how many anecdotes you've got room for, but I have one if you want to hear it.
Please, John. Yes.
There is a reason I don't like what we do being called team building. Now, I don't
Hmm.
care if people call it team building. Chiropractors don't like it when they say, "Will you crack my back?"
Right.
Makes them
Exactly.
makes them wince. But team building makes me wince. But every time somebody says, "So you're a team builder," I think about this group. a very large telecommunications company merging with another very large telecommunications company, and they didn't need two IT departments.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the company doing the acquisition kept their IT department and did not need the old IT department. However, the entire business of the company they were acquiring was information. So this is one case where the IT department is not a service provider as they normally are in a big company. They are a service provider, but they're also core business.
Mm-hmm.
The IT is what's being sold,
Right.
right? The information is what's being sold. It's core business. So we were given this group of 24 people. Their leader was a lady named Wendy Bliss. And we actually do a monthly series called the Wednesday Webinar, which is free that people can join. And if you join the one in March, you will meet Wendy Bliss, summarising a lifetime of experience in project management.
Yeah.
Wendy had the team of 24 people, and the only thing she knew for certain was two things. First of all, they would have to work like hell for the next 6 months, like they'd never worked before, to make this company saleable and saleable for the price.
Yeah.
Because if they'd struggled and hadn't had much success, the acquiring company may still have acquired it, but they would have gone through a broker, and they would have said, "Yeah, we want $100 million discount now," because it's not in the same state that we thought it was. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And there are companies that do that. There are companies that do the valuations for these very big mergers, and they would have definitely, they're hard negotiators. So there was a lot at stake. So number one, they have to work like hell for 6 months. Number two, what's waiting for them at the end is a pig slip.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. So I'm already seeing the entropy, the dip. Yeah.
So how do you say to these people, do what's good for the company, do what makes money for the company, work like hell, work day and night, and then you're fired. And that's what we were given. So it was hardly team building, team disintegrating, possibly,
Totally.
team destroying, not team building. So the question came, what is that one thing? What is that one thing that people have in common despite their differences? Is there anything they can unify around to hold them together for 6 months? Or is it just hopeless as they all fall into disagreement and start polishing their references all day long instead of working? And they came up with an answer. It's the most ingenious thing I've ever heard of. The key to it for us was realizing that it wasn't up to us to come up with the answer.
You bet.
They were smarter than us. It was up to them. So we made that the challenge and said, all right, well, we've run a program. We unified around the quest for the Holy Grail. That's great. But the Holy Grail that's waiting for you out there, what is that? Because it's not a good job. It's not promotion. It's not kudos. It's not even salary. It's not the things most people want. Do you have a Holy Grail, or is it just hopeless? And should we just all give up right now and tell Wendy it's impossible? So, so they got together. I just love this so much. I hope you do too. I hope the people listening and watching do too. They decided that their Holy Grail was making such a spectacular success of that 6 months that it got into the business press.
Wow.
Under the headline of "How did they do it?"
Wow.
With a picture of them all with their arms around each other, How did they do this? How did they do it? And that they would then be able to parlay that not into jobs, but into better jobs.
Yeah.
Into promotions and increase of salary and more challenging lives elsewhere, and not need the art placement company that had been hired.
Exactly.
And they did not need the art placement company that had been hired. The art placement company was never hired for the IT department. They all found great jobs. Wendy was one of them. And I've stayed in touch with her ever since. She just retired.
Unbelievable story. What an amazing Holy Grail. How did they do it?
That was what they wanted. They wanted to blow people's minds.
Yeah, exactly.
And create such a strong reputation that suddenly everybody wanted them.
That's brilliant.
Wasn't that clever?
It is. And what I hear in that is, in any opposing set of needs and competing priorities and conflicting points of view, that Holy Grail that you're talking about, I'm not sure if that language...
Dead right.
Okay, that's...
Dead on.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So that beautiful common ground that we can both admire in each other, but also it is a piece of commonality that can ignite fuel to carry us 6 months through a really crappy situation. That's phenomenal to be able to find that, to be able to
Yeah,
spot it, to, I think, co-discern it, right?
they did it.
Yeah.
We actually walked out of the room. We said, all right, now you need some peace and quiet to decide if there is a Holy Grail at all, and if so, what is it? You don't need us hanging around interrupting the process. So
Yeah.
we'll see you in half an hour. And half an hour later, that was what they'd come up with.
Did they tell you how that happened, John? Was there something that started to ignite it and leapfrogging, and then it kind of like, how did that go?
They gave us some clues. The biggest clue was the question they started with. We all think about Dale Carnegie, who wrote How to Win Friends and
Mm-hmm.
Influence People,
Mm-hmm.
but actually, his name wasn't even Carnegie. He modeled his name on the real Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie, who was the great industrialist and
Yeah.
was and
Yeah.
was a genius without any question.
Mm-hmm.
And Carnegie is the one who first said, if you can ask the right question, you're halfway to finding the right answer.
Yes.
That was originally not Dale, but Andrew
Oh
Carnegie who
my
said that.
goodness. Okay. Yeah.
Dale's real name was Carnegie, but he thought if he called himself Carnegie, he could benefit from the positive. It's like calling yourself, Fred Musk and
Yeah.
writing a
Yeah.
book about how to build rockets. So it's
Yeah.
Elon might be a little upset.
Yeah. A
Um,
little bit.
so they asked themselves a very good question. And the good question was, as we look around this group, is there anything at all that we have in common? Anything at all we can agree on, given that we have this very unrewarding prospect in front of us? And the one thing they could agree on was they all wanted a better job.
Yes.
That was something they could all salute. So that was the start.
Beautiful. And I'm just unlocked a different part of everybody's brain, and they came up with,
We
yeah,
want a better job. How do we get a
did,
better job? Who would we have to be to get a better job? Yeah, like that.
sure. And then
Yeah.
how did they do it?
Yeah,
What a
and
headline.
they did it. It was just a real privilege to watch them all go off to better jobs and get these little triumphant emails from, hey, I just got a job here, I just got a job there. And
Yeah.
and as I said, Wendy herself was one of them.
Well, have fun, do some good, be viable. I think that piece of work, right?
Yeah,
That checked
I
off
think so.
all three of your things right there.
Absolutely. But I wouldn't. I just add one thing, if I may. I wouldn't want people to think that it's all unicorns and circuses and butterflies
Mm-hmm.
and running in slow motion through a field of daisies. They had to
Yeah.
go through their darkest hour.
Yeah.
And so did we. We went with them. You cannot separate from people when they do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you lose all credibility. They went through their darkest hours. So did we. There were some bad nights and bad days when we thought this is just not going to work.
Yeah.
But of course, the secret is to persist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it gives a definition of fun. And in the end and throughout the period, there are moments of fun, and there's a lot of slugging and sacrifice and setbacks
Yeah.
and reversals. And that's just the recipe for life.
Yeah, absolutely. But watching people succeed has been a lot of fun. I get more of a kick out of that than succeeding in my own right. I'd far
Yeah.
rather watch others succeed.
Oh yeah.
And it's been a real privilege to be able to do that for all this time and still do it.
I mean, John, how do people get a hold of you if they're looking for you and your team?
That's fairly easy. I'm lucky to have an unusual name, Kolm. I'm Roma, and it's a gypsy name. It means hill. So really, I'm just Joe Hill. Um,
Yeah, there's probably no other Joe Hills on the internet.
well, there too many. But the only other Kolm that I know of that's well known is Ron Kolm, who's a children's author.
Okay.
And it's pretty hard to confuse the two of us. So you can probably get there just with Google if you can remember. It's K as in King, O as in Oscar, L as in Lima, and M as in Michael. Or you can just go to our website, which is teamresultsusa.com, results with an S on the end, Team Results USA, all as one word. And there's some decent information on there, and it's not all about me. There's actually some useful information there. There's even an AI there that we just built that you can log into and ask Dorothy questions about your workplace
Oh, fantastic.
and get advice from Dorothy on how do I get promoted, what do I do about that guy who always has to be the center of attention, how do I stop people being late, any kind of workplace question.
And why Dorothy?
because the credit for that goes to our PR manager, who's a wonderful lady named Layla Gilbert. Layla came up with that. We were looking for a name, and she said, "How about Dorothy's Road?" Rather than something that is more didactic, like, the information source. So I know and you don't. You're here to be taught. I will teach you. That's the last thing we wanted. It was more, come on a journey with us.
Right.
See if you can discover anything useful. So there's just the idea of let's go together down the yellow brick road and see what we can find.
Totally.
And to my absolute disbelief, nobody had ever registered Dorothy's Road. Can you believe that?
I can't believe that.
So now you can't, because we have it. And it's dorothysroad.com. That's one word.
Yep.
And again, if you do have questions about your workplace and you feel that you need some expert advice, maybe you don't want to talk to a colleague because you don't know who they'll talk to, anything like that, you could jump on Dorothy's Road and pour your heart out. And we have about 70 experts who provided us with the information base for Dorothy's Road. They're all pretty switched on people.
I bet.
See what Dorothy has to say.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's super helpful. John Kolm, thank you so much for devoting your time and to really being of service to our listeners. And I'm just hoping that a lot of people connect with you.
Brady, look, it's been very much my pleasure. Thank you so much for sponsoring a longer and more thoughtful program. I can't tell you how much that's appreciated. We live in a world where people think it's still smart to say, give me the 2-minute elevator speech.
Yeah.
And it's not, and it is not smart. I would urge all your people to look for the long conversation, not the short conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you for today's long conversation. I greatly enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. All right, John. All the best.
Thank you.